Hello guys, how are we doing? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be covering 5 mistakes you're probably making when you're playing Control on Black Ops 6 ranked play. These are mistakes that I see people make way too often, at least when I'm playing. These are mistakes I used to make myself. I've since learned from them, and I'm here to just give my knowledge to you to stop you guys from making the same mistakes as I have done, and as I say, I've seen other people do as well. Share this with your friends, share this with the squad stacks you play with, and I promise you will get more wins on Control following today. First step we're going to be covering is do not jump on a control point unless you've got map control, or you're going to be diverting the enemy team enough to distract them, enough for your teammates to be able to get on the objective, the other side of the map. Now, obviously, if you're limited for time or you're limited in lives, you're not going to want to not jump off the objective. You're going to want to try and soak the objective as much as you can, because you're going to run out of time otherwise, or you'll lose the round if you simply jump off of it. But we're talking about a situation where you don't necessarily need the time. You've got plenty of time, you've got plenty of lives, and you're sort of middle of a standard round. Now we're going to take the position on protocol here, where you've got A and B. You've got the tower, you've got grenades, you've got trip here, and you've got the middle gun, just to give you guys an idea of where we're looking. And we're taking the role of this player who's out towards the boat. Now, what I see a lot of people do is go from boat, their team's nowhere near them, and as I say, if you're solo queuing, you're going to have to be a little bit aware of the minimap to know where your teammates are, as you should do anyway if you're solo queuing. And if you're quad stacking, you should know where your teammates are from them communicating to you effectively, which would make this a lot easier. Now, what I see a lot of people do, and if this is the mistake I'm talking about, is they're jumping on the point in this circumstance. So obviously you don't know where the enemies are. The blue team are your enemies. You don't necessarily know where they are, but you know your teammates aren't anywhere near you. They're not anywhere to overlook the objective that you're trying to capture. Now, the danger of doing this is that you don't have control, or at least your team don't have control of the three, and I'm using this map, this point in particular because it does have 3 key areas you want to try and get control of, ideally, on this point. So you don't have a teammate top triple, you don't have a teammate top middle, and you don't have a teammate back tower, meaning that when you're on the point on your own, you have to look at every single possible angle to make sure you don't die off of it. Now, what's bound to happen, especially when your teammates are where they are, or maybe they're over towards A or whatever, if they don't have control of trip, top, and back tower, every single one of the enemies that might be in that position is going to look at you, and they're going to be able to kill you very quickly because you're very open on that objective, and they're then going to be able to go back to whatever they were doing in the first place. So you're not, by jumping on this point at this very particular time, you're not being a huge diversion for them, causing your teammates a free access to the other objective. In fact, they're going to kill you and go back to what they were doing very, very quickly. Now, you don't necessarily know, and it doesn't always mean that you're always going to have an enemy top triple, top middle, or back tower, but you don't know. So what you should do, instead of doing this and getting absolutely beamed off the objective, is try to take map control. So you want to be the person who gets control of the map, allowing the rest of your team to jump on the objective, especially when you know you've got a little bit of weight towards the other objective, the other side of the map. Try and win your gunfight back tower. And then this is the sort of area you really want to control, and controlling that area and having control of that area essentially allows you to cause a distraction, especially if you're getting if you're getting spawn kills and you're running the enemy's lives down. You can then hopefully aim to get into a position like castle, where from this position at least you can guarantee enemies aren't going to be coming from grenades, they're not going to be coming from tower, they're not going to be coming from the torture room, whatever you want to call it, they're not going to be coming from the spawn, they're going to be coming from this left-hand side, meaning that your teammates can jump on the hill and only have to worry about a certain area of the map whilst you're in the spawn draining lives down. And that is a far more effective use of your life going around that left side alone than jumping on the hill and just getting absolutely beamed off it. Now, if you had, if we move back to a position like so, where let's say you did have, instead of this player here, let's say this one of your teammates gets the kill on that player, and they have your top trip, this is a much better situation in which you could probably argue you should get on the point, because with your teammate here, they can watch the entire top of the map for you, meaning that all you need to do is focus on the back tower, and that means you only got one area to watch. You can watch the kill, you can just try and win that one-on-one gunfight, and that's a lot better position to be in. And this just goes back to what I'm saying. The whole point of this is don't jump on the objective unless you have map control. That doesn't necessarily mean you need a teammate who's in this area. Your teammate has to just have control of that area by having a good shot with an AR, looking over that. You need to trust them, meaning that you only need to watch a certain area. Okay, that's absolutely fine. The situation where it was originally, where you don't have a player there, you have an enemy there potentially, and that's where it's a bad idea. Now, hopefully that logic applies to all hill combinations for you. Obviously, there's going to be points like this on every map. So let's take a quick look at Vault. So on B, if you can somehow manage to get through to R, or a teammate of yours can get through to R, it makes it a lot easier to capture B with your teammate having control of that area, because it gives you something not to worry about. And on A, Catwalk is that pivotal area where if you don't have control of it, you're always tweaking that an enemy could be there. And then on Hacienda, you've got on B the platform, which is obviously a really key area to have control of, because it means the enemy has to get through you to get to B, and it means you only really need to watch when you're on the objective, your flank or the grass area at the front. And then on A good area to have control of, obviously, is the top of the middle. It means the enemies can only really come from bottom U and wine, sorry. And it essentially means your enemies, or your teammates, sorry, can get on the point and only need to watch those two specific areas. So that's the logic. Don't get on a control point unless you already have map control. I see happen a little less commonly, but it does happen quite a lot, especially in the lower ranks, is when people try and spawn trap at the wrong point. Now, everybody knows that spawn trapping on control is the way you make their lives less and eventually can win from spawn trapping, because it's a nightmare when you are being spawn trapped. But when you're on offense, spawn trapping has to be done at the right time. Obviously on defense, getting a spawn trap is perfect no matter what time in the map it is, unless your teammates are getting spawn trapped themselves. Now, we take this position here, we're on Vault. Again, we're taking the perspective and the perspective of this white and red player rather than the red and white player, and we are on offense. Okay, we're trying to capture the objectives is the goal, or kill them before the 2 minutes is out, or however long a round is. Now, let's say you're in a fortunate circumstance where, as you're progressing up the map, you manage to slip through the net and you manage to get into the spawn, and meanwhile your teammates are getting spawn trapped. Now, spawn trapping on Protocol is possible. Spawn trapping on Hacienda, sorry, is possible. Spawn trapping on Vault is possible and easy if you're playing against a relatively good team. Now, this is a circumstance I see happen more frequently than it probably should. It's where you have a teammate who goes to the spawn trap position when there is nobody even there to spawn trap. You know, the enemies are still all up there spawn trapping the rest of your team. They're getting rid of 2-3 lives at a time. Meanwhile, you're sat there, the other side of the map, trying to dwindle the lives down with no one there being available to shoot. Now, let's say even in a circumstance where you do have a one person to shoot at, let's say there's players here, as I say, spawn trapping on defense is a very easy to do and can be done by 2 or 3, and sometimes even 2 people. Vault is one where all you need is a player right and a player left. Protocol, fairly similar, you need a player right, a player left. Hacienda, similar, player left and a player right, and you can pretty much spawn trap as long as you're in the right position. So even if you're at a spot where you're challenging one-on-one players off spawn, yes, you might be winning that gunfight. You might be draining a life down one at a time every 10 seconds or so, because you're playing this one player who's coming off spawn over and over again. That's great. But while you're draining 1 life every 10 seconds, the enemy team, because they've got a good spawn trap and a good setup, are draining 3 lives every 10 seconds. You've got 3 teammates who are strapped in the spawn. Now, what you should be doing instead of this, because the risk in doing this is that your lives are going down faster than theirs. The enemies aren't really worried about anything because you're not forcing any objective. And thirdly, the time might literally go down and you lose around because you run out of time. What you should be doing in this situation is either, in this situation here, is turning around, maybe not quite this far, but when your teammates are getting completely spawn trapped, you might want to try and offer them a little bit of help. You might want to try to kill this player here, allowing your teammates then to flood right towards B whilst you're in this position. Especially when you're up here, you can probably beam this player here anyway, but when they get a little bit further around the back, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So either, if you get the opportunity where you get through the map, either be annoying, get a couple kills in the back, and then go and spawn trap the 2 people you've just killed. That, or when you're in a position where you've got a one-on-one situation in the spawn, you jump on the objective. So you can be on B here, and whilst you're on B, you can be looking out for this enemy who's going to be coming here, that you're going to win every one-on-one under this. Meanwhile, you're capturing the objective. That's going to draw people from the enemy team to come to you, try and kill you, meaning that your teammates can maybe find a way out to the other objective. And then when you spawn back in, your teammates are actually out and they're safe. So doing what I've just explained is when you're trying to spawn trap at the wrong time is a huge mistake, so you've got to be careful when you do it. You want to do what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for your stat line. This next mistake is what can separate the really good players with the great players. Now, in short, in the most simplest way possible, it's when you are being spawn trapped, when you feel like there's a risk of being spawn trapped, push out of the spawn as a single unit. Now, spawn trapping happens when typically you've got one or two of the enemy team in positions that are overlooking your spawn or can catch you off guard coming out of spawn. And oftentimes, in order to do an effective spawn trap, the enemy needs to have someone watching the right, someone watching the left, and they're typically split. Now, what happens far too frequently, especially in the lower ranks, is that when players come out of spawn, they push as they spawn in, maybe 3 or 4 seconds apart. They run, and because the enemies who are spawn trapping them are only taking 1 or 2 enemies at a time to maximum, they're just getting obliterated, and their spawn trap continues to occur. Now, one of the biggest examples of this happening is on Protocol, when you can get trapped at this back tree grassy area, and your enemies just seem to be pounding down on you from the helicopter, from maybe the top triple here, maybe just from the archers generally. So let's take an example here just to help you guys visualize it. So we're taking the position of the red team, as we have been throughout the video, and you're coming off spawn, and you come off spawn separately just like this, and you end up dying. Now, what that then leads to, let's say that player then goes to challenge. Even if you trade the player, the enemies are still taking one-on-one gunfights, and because they're in better positions than you, because you're simply coming off a spawn, they're winning the gunfights over and over again. And what will happen is you just continually get stuck in that spawn trap until you manage to somehow, luckily, maybe get out of it. And this is all occurring, if we rewind this back, this is all occurring because you're taking on one-on-one gunfights with the players who are supposedly spawn trapping you, and you're dying and causing yourself to be back in spawn. So an easy way to mitigate that from happening, if we take this all the way back to the beginning in that first scenario, we've got the players split, is instead of coming off of spawn split, you regroup and tying up. Now, what's important when you're doing this, and this is really difficult when you're solo queuing, part of the reason why it's hard to solo queue, is when you're taking on gunfights, you're now taking it on 2, 3 on 1, meaning that you're far likely to not only trade, but maybe just get the kill in the first place, because you're shooting 2 bullets for every 1 bullet the enemy is shooting back, because there's only 1 of them. To visualize it, this is an example of how it can happen. You single out the player number 4, you get the kill, you then progress up the map, you then take on the one-on-one gunfights at a time, maybe 2 versus 3, and then you eventually get on the point. And that is the most effective way you can come out of the spawn trap. Now, if you're solo queuing, it can be a little bit more difficult, which is why I would suggest being that person who stays with the team. If you don't go in first, wait for your teammates to run in front of you if you can't communicate with them, and closely follow that teammate to ensure that you either got their trade or you can team shoot as you're running out of spawn. But there's no way, especially at this time in the year, you should be running off spawn, very split, enabling one-on-one gunfights, because your enemies are going to be in a different corner than they were the first time you spawned in. They might be in a different head glitch than they were before, and it's going to make it really impossible to get out of your spawn, and you're going to lose a lot of lives before you suddenly get out. Best thing you can do is the first time you realize you're stuck in spawn and the enemies have got decent map control, is just to push out of the spawn together. The next thing, which can be quite frustrating, especially as a teammate of this sort of player, is when somebody on your team, or when you get into a position where you could cut the map, but you decide not to. Now, cutting the map, which we're going to get onto in a minute, and we're going to visualize it here, is where you get to a position where you can eliminate areas of the map the enemy can get to by being in a line of sight that looks from point A to point B, and the enemies can't run between that sort of line of sight. Now, got this position here, playing number 1 on the blue team. We're actually taking control of the blue team now, switching it up, keeping you guys awake. They managed to get into office on Hacienda, and on offense, obviously you need to allow your team to get to point A and point B. But office is a real small room, and especially in a situation where they're not cutting them up and they're just sat in the corner waiting for some free kills, all they've really got control of is the office. Now, that leaves a lot open. An enemy could get from their spawn through to garage, they could get to the top of top open and go from there to anywhere. They could get all the way around the right hand side, they could go through B, maybe get to top close, go to top close window, all the way through to the spawn, and they could even just run through wine all the way underneath the player who's sat in a corner in office through to their spawn. So they're not really cutting them up, and they're not really being valuable for the team, considering the beneficial position they could be in. For example, instead of sitting here in the office, they could decide to instead sit on the hedge, and whilst they're on this hedge, they're basically cutting off the entire map. The enemy has to pretty much run through them or win a gunfight to them in order to get out of spawn. So this is a real optimal area to be at, because it does cover the entire map, And what this allows your teammates to do is go from their spawn, whether through the left, through the middle, or through the right, but get to A and B from here. Obviously, if you're on your own doing this, you're probably going to die, especially if there's 4 people coming off a spawn like I'm indicating here. Now, obviously, this is a prime position and you're likely to die off it, but you don't necessarily have to be there. You could be at the back of grass, looking at the cross out of the map. Obviously, this is a little bit of a tighter line of sight, so if enemies somehow manage to get through the door and behind the hedge, they're out of sight. But this does eliminate a lot of areas the enemies can get to because you're still cutting the map. And what this position specifically will allow your teammates to do is probably get all the way to B without being harmed. All they need to really watch out for is enemies who manage to get their way around to rock and then come from that sort of area. So maybe window or maybe bottom U can be a little bit of a watch spot for them. But they don't have to worry about this side because you're cutting the map. You're probably going to die from plat if no one's there in the first place anyway, so your teammates can probably assure that that's clear. And another example of that, this is a little bit more of a, we're getting less and less effective here throughout this example. But if you just lay down on this area, you can see all the way through the bottom doors, you can see wine, but most importantly, you're cutting off this right-hand side of the map, from the enemies, basically guaranteeing your teammates that they can get from their spawn all the way through garage and through rock and eventually get to top open. But this being this valuable, being in this position, it basically tells your teammates that they can only be in certain areas. They can only maybe come from top office wine or this left-hand side of the map, but they don't have to worry about your side of the map because you're there cutting that area of the map off. So don't make that mistake. Don't get into an advantageous position and not cut the map. Be useful. Final mistake we're going to be covering in today's video is not de-ticking or unticking the control or the final control segment or any of the control segments within control itself. Now, this is a mistake I even see CDL level pro players make in their matches, and it can be the difference between a victory and a loss. For those of you who don't know, or you probably already know a lot of this, a control point has 3 segments. Each segment takes 20 seconds for a single player, if there's a solo player on it, to take. And that means that the difference between the players capturing an objective or capturing an extra segment or completing a segment can be 19 seconds. If you dwindle it all the way down and a solo player hops on it, it takes them 20 seconds. Whereas if you don't dwindle that segment down and you leave it at 99% captured, it's only going to take a solo player a single second to complete that full segment, essentially give their team a little bit more time, and can be the difference between a win and a loss. We're going to take a little bit of a look at a visualization here. You can see the red team are completely on the objective. They're ticking that green point up, that A point up, but the blue team managed to secure that. They've managed to get all the kills. They get a 4-up, and you've probably been in a situation like this before on ranked play. But instead of staying on the point and completely de-ticking it, i.e. giving you guys 20 seconds of leeway for a single player to have to catch that, they all go and run for spawn traps. Now, this is fine, especially if they've got really limited time left. But what can happen here is all it takes is a couple of gunfights to take place, a couple of trades to take place. Players can get up on the objective really quickly, and within a second, because you didn't de-tick it, they have then got that A objective, and they've got an additional minute to win the round, or at least try and dwindle your lives down, or get on B itself. Now, if the player who was the furthest back, taking a few steps back now, instead decided to capture that or de-tick that objective completely, by the time this player gets to a position throughout all these gunfights, it's going to take them 20 seconds to get it rather than 1, 2, or maybe a few seconds. And that can be, as I say, the difference between a win and a loss. 20 seconds is enough time for this player off spawn to come and challenge that gunfight while these two remain in the spawn trap. And it's, as I say, can be the difference maker between getting your SR with that dub or losing 20 to 30 SR. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found some of these useful at least. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if there's anything I've missed that you feel like you want other people to know, for those of you who read the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao for now.